Hello. Have you ever found yourself searching on Google in the middle of the night to unravel the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle? Well, this man wasted no time and embarked on a journey to witness the enigmatic place with his own eyes. However, he was in no way prepared for what awaited him. Let me introduce you to Gulliver, an easygoing guide who has a fondness for basketball, Star Wars, and rock music. His room resembles that of a typical teenager, and even at work, he occasionally indulges in his favorite game, Guitar Hero. Speaking of work, Gulliver is employed at a trendy New York newspaper, not as a journalist, but rather as a postal service employee. One day, a new colleague named Dan joins the office. It becomes evident that Dan has no intention of staying in this entry-level position for long. Meanwhile, Gulliver feels a sense of unease in his work environment. He sees himself as a mere cog in the machine and is fearful of approaching the journalists, especially the captivating Darcy, whom he has been infatuated with from the very beginning. Dan, the new employee, playfully taunts Gulliver about his hesitation to make the first move and approach the girl he likes. At the end of the day, Dan delivers shocking news to Gulliver. Despite being a newcomer, he has been promoted to head of the mail service. This revelation hits Gulliver like a punch to the gut, reminding him that he has remained in the same position for a decade without any prospects for advancement. Dan's words shake Gulliver to his core, and he leaves the office late into the night, seething with frustration. As he heads towards the elevator, he notices that Darcy is still seated in front of her computer. Their eyes met, sparking a conversation between the two. Gulliver gathers the courage to almost ask her out, but panic sets in, causing him to feign a different purpose for his approach. He pretends to be busy and wants some documents. Caught in a web of lies, Gulliver struggles to extricate himself from the tangled situation he has woven. He claims to be constantly writing journalism articles, though he never shows them to anyone, and spins tales of frequent travels to places like Mexico and New Zealand. Darcy, pleasantly surprised, asks him to bring her some of his writings. However, the following morning, Gulliver finds himself grappling to concoct a grand story about his adventures in different countries, but he cannot progress beyond the headlines. Finally, a stroke of genius strikes him. He decides to piece together fragments from various travel guides and websites. Yet, instead of mustering the courage to ask Darcy out, Gulliver is taken aback when she presents him with an unexpected proposition. It turns out she has long been in search of a journalist to undertake an important mission, to investigate the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Once again, Gulliver finds himself unable to decline. He fabricates a web of lies, claiming to be an experienced sailor who is not at all daunted by the prospect of spending 3 full weeks at sea. Gulliver arrives in the Bermuda Triangle, where he is provided with a boat and a map with coordinates. In the initial hours of the adventure, he indulges in magazines about robots and savors the experience of life at sea. However, after a brief nap, he awakens to a horrifying realization. He is caught in a violent storm, his boat perilously close to a colossal water tornado. Before Gulliver can fully comprehend his situation, the ominous vortex engulfs his boat. He loses consciousness, only to wake up immobilized and feeling strange creatures crawling over him. These are not insects, but rather peculiar little men in military uniforms. Gulliver learns that he has been transported to a place called Lilliput and stands accused of aiding and abetting their enemies. He quickly realizes that he must flee before it is too late. With ease, he breaks free from the ropes that bind him to the ground and attempts to escape, but the odds are against him. The inhabitants of Lilliput may be small in stature, but they possess sharp minds. They bring the giant down once again, leading him through the city towards the palace of King Theodore. Princess Marie, appalled by the treatment of their guest, confronts her father, deeming it inhumane. She pleads for the giant to be released from his restraints. However, her fiancé, the local general, Edward, vehemently opposes her request. Convinced that Gulliver is a spy from the rival kingdom of Blefuscu, he demands that the giant be detained. Gulliver is thrown into a dungeon, where he meets Horatio, a Lilliputian imprisoned for expressing his love for Princess Marie. Gulliver finds it incredulous that such an act could warrant imprisonment. Horatio explains that for men of their class, such actions are not permitted unless one commits an incredibly valorous act. The conversation between the unfortunate friends is interrupted by General Edward. Gulliver attempts to win his favor, requesting the loosening of his restraints, but the general refuses. Instead, he seals the giant and forces him to plow the fields. Meanwhile, the army of Blefuscu gathers at the kingdom's gates, taking advantage of the general's temporary absence to infiltrate the realm. The invaders' plan is simple: set fire to the royal family's castle and abduct Princess Marie. General Edward rushes to the rescue of his beloved, but he is quickly captured by the enemy soldiers. For Gulliver, saving the princess is a simple task. He extends his hand towards her balcony. However, rescuing the princess alone is not enough. The king remains trapped inside the burning palace. Gulliver manages to break a window, but there is no way to physically evacuate the small people. The available water supply is insufficient to extinguish a fire of such magnitude. Gulliver desperately searches for a solution, and then a brilliant idea strikes him. He removes his pants, and he successfully saves the king. The crowd pays homage to the hero, and King Theodore extends an invitation to Gulliver to attend a grand banquet. Gulliver accepts, but with one condition. He requests the release of his friend Horatio from captivity, and insists that he be included in the festivities as well. Throughout the evening, the friends luxuriate in the royal chambers. Horatio grows closer to Princess Marie, while Gulliver becomes the center of attention, captivating the entire assembly. He regales his guests with tales of his origins, but as is often the case with Gulliver, the conversation takes a whimsical turn, blending truth with fiction. Soon, those in attendance begin to believe that Manhattan is a colossal monarchy, with Gulliver as its lord and ruler. Over the following 7 days, the industrious inhabitants of Lilliput construct a human-sized house for Gulliver. They even erect a theater where they perform plays inspired by Star Wars, Titanic, and Avatar. Gulliver, seizing the moment, enthralls the audience by relating these stories as if they were events from his own life. The newfound idol captivates everyone, except for Edward, who remains staunchly skeptical. Meanwhile, Horatio thrives on his newfound happiness. With Gulliver's guidance, he receives courting advice and serenades his beloved with a song. It appears that Princess Marie, enchanted by his charm, slowly loses interest in General Edward. Soon, Gulliver's boat is discovered. Though broken, the subjects of King Theodore promise swift repairs. Delighted, the giant is overcome with joy, particularly when they find a phone aboard the boat, filled with a stack of voice note messages from his beloved Darcy. Eagerly, Gulliver anticipates hearing words of love from the young woman. During Gulliver's absence, Darcy takes the time to examine his article more closely and discovers that it is entirely plagiarized from guidebooks and online articles. Now the journalist must undertake the assignment herself and wants nothing to do with Gulliver anymore. The giant's enthusiasm diminishes instantly. He is sitting by himself in the evening, feeling depressed, when Princess Marie approaches him. She senses that Gulliver is distraught because of the princess awaiting him in a distant kingdom. Suddenly, Marie confesses that she is also confuted. She has fallen in love with Horatio. Gulliver uplifts her spirits, urging her to follow the call of her heart. He also requests the king's permission to stay a little longer. When Edward knows that the giant is in no hurry to depart, he becomes furious. The king does not appreciate his insolence and decides to appoint Gulliver as a general, making Edward his deputy. The latter is so humiliated that he becomes unhinged and resolves to seek revenge. Edward lowers the defenses protecting Lilliput's shores from invaders, and the soldiers of Blefuscu immediately take advantage of the situation. Gulliver becomes the last hope for the inhabitants of Lilliput, as he is the only one who can halt the invading fleet. Gulliver does not back down in the face of the daunting task. He bravely wades into the water and sets out to negotiate with the enemy. The giant admits that he does not want to kill anyone and offers the sailors of Blefuscu a chance to retreat. However, the invaders do not appreciate the general's mercy. Of course, Gulliver is impervious to cannons of that size, easily withstanding the gunfire. With a surge of frenzy, he single-handedly eliminates the entire enemy fleet, receiving a hero's welcome as Edward's plan fails. The princess also rejects Edward and declares her intent to break off their engagement. Edward is furious. With no further options for revenge, he decides to take an extreme measure, a visit to a neighboring enemy state, and then informs the local king that Gulliver has transformed Lilliput into a replica of the distant and repugnant Manhattan. If they don't act, the same fate will soon befall their kingdom. Edward proposes a plan he devised based on the robotics manual found on Gulliver's boat. After a while, the mysterious 5 strikes resound in Lilliput's main square, and the crowd disperses in a panicked frenzy. Horatio tells Gulliver that something terrible is about to occur, and the giant sees an unfamiliar robot, controlled by Edward, looming before him. The king realizes that his trusted servant has betrayed him and that only Gulliver can save the monarchy. The giant is faced with a decisive battle, which he readily joins, despite having no idea what awaits him next. Gulliver attempts to overpower his adversary but fails. Edward, on the other hand, effortlessly lifts the giant from the ground, demanding his surrender. Gulliver immediately pleads for mercy, which amazes the onlookers, because they were taking him as an idol and thinking that he was the president of another country and the bravest man in the world. But this time, Gulliver is not joking or lying. He confesses that he has always deceived the Lilliputians. After this humiliating defeat, Edward orders Gulliver to be tied to a raft and sent to a nearby island. The giant had heard that it was dangerous, but when he arrived at Ely, it seemed relatively calm. Not for long, though. Concerned, Horatio suggests to the princess that they flee the kingdom together before it's too late. However, Maria is disappointed in him. In a fit of anger, she declares that all of Horatio's words, just like Gulliver's, are lies. Meanwhile, the rest of the Lilliputians have to worry about another unexpected visitor. Darcy, who went to the Bermuda Triangle to investigate, laid ashore. In the other kingdom, Gulliver wakes up and realizes that this time he is in a land of giants. He is now at the mercy of a giant girl who torments him all day and gives him no respite. However, he won't suffer for long as Horatio comes to his rescue. He asks the giant to return and save Lilliput. Gulliver resists, even though he has heard the news of Darcy's arrival. Horatio reminds him of all his past exploits, and the giant eventually agrees. Once in Lilliput, the first thing Gulliver does is head to the dungeon, where Darcy is held captive alongside the king and queen. The girl asks why everyone here calls her Princess Gulliver, and Gulliver decides, for the first time in his life, to honestly answer this rather embarrassing question. Darcy is smiling, but there is no time for sentiment. She says it's time to escape. Gulliver says that he has already let down the people of Lilliput once and has no intention of doing it again. The giant heads to the main square for a decisive duel with Edward. At first, things weren't bad. But quickly, the cunning general unveils his secret weapon, a paralyzing gun. With this advantage in his hands, Gulliver had no chance to beat him. But Horatio came to his aid just in time. He sneaks into the robot's suit and cuts the wires. It is now easy to defeat Edward, and Gulliver wastes no time standing up again. As all the people of Lilliput rejoice, the giant becomes a new hero, just like his friend Horatio, who is not only forgiven by Princess Murray but also blessed by the king himself to marry her. Gulliver. He is doing well too. Darcy kisses him and leads with him to Manhattan. Now they work together and write travel articles. And here we come to the end of this movie. Hope you enjoyed it. You can find the name of the movie below in the description box. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more fantastic film recaps.